is the mayor? What is people doing to stop this stuff? It needs to stop. Nobody is catching nobody.
Baltimore has seen so much pain. More than 1,500 people killed in the past 5 years, and more than half of those homicides remain unsolved.
Now, so far in 2022, Baltimore City's averaging more than one murder per day, with 31 people killed in the first 25 days of the year.
And there has been no arrest in any of those murders so far.
You know, sometimes things get so bad, they get so dark that you lose all hope. And what I opened this segment with was some footage from the local news from back in 2022, talking about the absolute disaster that the city of Baltimore was back then. And as an example of that, I showed you a report from January 26th of that year documenting that they had 31 homicides already, so well ahead of the number of days of the year, and all of those homicides were unsolved or uncleared. And of course, this ended up continuing throughout the course of the year, where Baltimore had a very comical below 50% homicide clearance rate, which, by the way, was bolstered by what is called special clearance, which is when they determine that the likely suspect of the homicide has either escaped and evaded custody or has been killed. And oftentimes in Baltimore, it was the latter that they were using, the or has been killed. But what was ridiculous about that is that the killer of the other person that they thought did the original homicide was also somebody that they were unable to identify in many circumstances. So what you ended up with was a city that was experiencing something that we did not see very often in this country, which was homicide rates higher than the 1990s, higher than the 1980s. In fact, all-time highs during the tenure of the district attorney, Marilyn Mosby, who took over post the Freddie Gray incident. And Mosby dedicated her office to the thing that the left-wingers would start doing post-George Floyd way back in 2015, which was releasing as many criminals as possible, disarming the district attorney's office, getting rid of the career prosecutors that make that place function, and this led to absolutely disastrous results.
Cunningham is not alone waiting for answers. A CBS News analysis of FBI homicide data shows Baltimore City's average clearance rate from 2015 to 2019 was just 38.7%, hitting a low of 29.7% in 2015. The tumultuous year when Freddie Gray was killed in police custody and arrests plummeted. The clearance rate in 2020 improved to 47%. And so far this year, it's around 42%.
But because she was a strong black woman who said Black Lives Matter enough times, it seemed like her election and re-election and continued re-election would be inevitable. She was also somebody who was featured in the national media multiple different times, but then, as if an answer to the prayers of the law-abiding universe, Marilyn Mosby was indicted. During COVID-19, she improperly filled out forms in order to take out a loan, claiming that she had no income or something of the sort, in order to buy properties in Florida, and she was busted for it, and this was something that she had to carry with her heading into the campaign. That being said, it didn't seem like it was going to be a very good result even if she was ousted, because the main opponent that she had was a man called Ivan Bates, who had previously run in the Democratic primary against her the previous go-around as a more left-wing, more criminal justice reformer than Mosby herself. So in reality, in my opinion, at this moment in time, I didn't think it would have made all that much of a difference, so I didn't cover this Democratic primary. And by the way, it's Baltimore, so there was no chance a Republican was going to win. But to my surprise, not only did Ivan Bates win, but that win, that victory, may be the most important electoral victory in the history of the city of Baltimore, because even though Bates had previously ran to the left of Marilyn Mosby, this time he was running on restoring the state's attorney's office, on bringing back the career prosecutors, and on a tough on crime approach that many Democrats might pay lip service to, but Ivan Bates absolutely implemented. And his victory should be an example that there is no place in the United States of America that is beyond saving, that is beyond hope, because if you have the right person with the right policies at the right time, they can do the right thing, and the results are absolutely amazing. And this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
So I just want to cut something off right at the knees, because this is the talking point that a lot of left-wing idiots are going with, which is it is actually Brandon Scott, the mayor of the city of Baltimore, that has led to the amazing crime drop, specifically a homicide drop in the city of Baltimore since he took office. Now, this should be debunked quickly and easily. First and foremost, Brandon Scott took office in late December of 2020. I showed you that report right there, which is of 2022. And as you can see by this homicide chart, during the first 2 years that he was in office, 2021 and 2022, homicides didn't improve at all. They were still absolutely terrible in every possible way. And by the way, for everybody who's trying to blame the pandemic, I will just point out that it is clearly the Freddie Gray effect, the Black Lives Matter effect, as the increase in homicide to all-time highs in the city of Baltimore dates back to 2015, not 2020. So obviously, it is not Brandon Scott. He had 2 years on his own with District Attorney Marilyn Mosby, or technically State's Attorney, and obviously Mosby being awful at her job, focusing on getting criminals out of prison, not clearing any homicides, treating criminals like they're innocent Beba Angel Aladdins just trying to feed their starving families, did not actually get undone by Brandon Scott. But as you can see right there, 2023 is the year of change. This is when Ivan Bates took office. And again, Ivan Bates ran on a very simple program. He was going to restore the trust of the public in the state's attorney's office. He was going to hire experienced litigators that know how to prosecute crimes, not create departments for freeing criminals. By the way, many of the people that Mosby declared innocent and freed actually went on to hurt and or kill people in the short time after that. But he also decided that he was going to do something that I've been advocating for years. I never thought it would be implemented in a place like Baltimore and it would work this well. But guess what? It absolutely did, which was target the core group of criminals, the repeat offenders who are constantly committing crimes, specifically those who are committing gun crimes, for prosecution. And the homicide rates have dropped so significantly in Baltimore, you are going to be blown away by the numbers.
The beginning of Ivan Bates' term.
Office of State's Attorney.
He made it clear.
And enough is enough.
Criminals in Baltimore would be the target.
Well, if you're breaking the law, you're going to walk around for legal handguns on the streets. Bring your toothbrush with you, because we're going to send you to jail.
Now, Ivan Bates set the tone from day one that he was not one of these progressive prosecutors who thought criminals were innocent and that jail was some great evil that we should never utilize under any circumstances. In fact, just a year removed from that report about how there were 31 unsolved murders in just 25 days in the city of Baltimore, Ivan Bates went on television the day he was sworn in and said straight up, if you're going to commit a crime, pack a toothbrush because you're spending the night in jail immediately. And by the way, we are going to lock you up for a significantly lengthy period of time if you're committing a serious violent offense. No more games, no more Marilyn Mosby free passes at the state's attorney's office. And he even partnered with a U.S. attorney to make sure cases that could slip through his district attorney's office were prosecutable on the federal level when applicable.
Working with the U.S. attorney for Maryland at the time, Eric Barron, to go after violent incidents. After Barron sent a message to lawbreakers in the area.
This Al Capone model of prosecution is designed to take violent people off the streets by any appropriate legal means necessary.
I think we're on our way to making this sustainable if we can keep this up. If you look at when this started, end of August 2022, right? That's the first time you saw this broad representation of federal, state, and local partners. And immediately after that, what happened? We started seeing historic reductions in violence.
Now, credit does go to the U.S. Attorney for Maryland, obviously, because he knew that there were problems back in August of 2022. He launched this initiative in partnership with the state and with the city, but obviously Marilyn Mosby was not a good partner for the city of Baltimore. She needed to be ousted, and this is why we see the improvement in terms of the homicide stats post Ivan Bates taking office, because if your local state's attorney's office is not interested in referring cases to the federal government, to the state government, guess what? you're not going to be able to do anything, even with all of the federal support that you can imagine. However, once these guys teamed up, it was over for the criminals.
Now,
We're looking to hold everybody accountable.
Bates is taking his plea to the public, asking for another term.
I'm running for re-election.
While on the radio, talking about the progress of Bates' citation docket, which is a criminal court specifically for lower-level offenses and quality-of-life crimes, but the effort has not been entirely smooth.
We're going to continue to do things until we make changes. Doesn't matter. We're not going to let one naysayer stop us. We're going to continue to fight for the people.
In July, we spoke with Bates about what he said was a lack of citations coming from the Baltimore Police Department.
Why do you believe the police department is not willing to write the citations?
You know, I don't know. What I do know is I see the mayor say he's the boss, people do what he tells them to, and they're his police. So just as the buck stops here in Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, the buck has to stop there with the mayor.
Now again, it has not been 100% smooth sailing for Ivan Bates. Obviously, in this particular instance, he's actually trying to work on quality of life crimes to attract more businesses back to the city. But guess who is coming up against Ivan Bates in this regard? Obviously, it's the golden boy of the progressive left, Mayor Brandon Scott, who is ordering the police to do the opposite of what the state's attorney needs them to do in order to make sure they have basic enforcement of the low-level crimes. And the thing is, it's not even in dispute, in my opinion, on who's in the right in this regard, because when we look at the homicide numbers, honestly, when I first saw them, I didn't think they were real. When I saw them again and confirmed them to be real, I was actually borderline about to cry because it was so amazing. You see that Ivan Bates has the truth of it. Since this man has taken office, homicide in the city of Baltimore is down 61%. 61%. Baltimore was as bad in terms of homicide that it had ever been in the history of the city, the worst in the entire country, by the way, in any given year under Marilyn Mosby. And just in a few short years, Ivan Bates has driven that down 61%. Baltimore had a high homicide rate for the first half of the year of 2025, but by Baltimore standards, it was down so extraordinarily low in comparison. Again, it can be described as a miracle. Baltimore had, for the first half of 2025, 11-ish homicides per 100,000. In Marilyn Mosby's tenure in office, that number was over 30 per 100,000, and Baltimore would finish in the 50s per 100,000 to the 60s in any given year under her tenure, but Ivan Bates has them at 11 through the first half of 2025. Raw numbers every single year, according to this chart, you have in and around and over 300 homicides in the city of Baltimore. And again, we don't have the complete stats yet because they're not available to us because it's not the end of the year. But in 2025, you have just over 100 homicides in the city of Baltimore. You had 7 homicides in the summer of August of this year. The summer is when everything goes down in Baltimore. The weekend barbecues that turn into shootings and all that. We all have heard the stories a million times. They had 7. Remember in January, where it's way too cold to be out acting a fool under Marilyn Mosby, just before Ivan Bates took office. 2 years into Brandon Scott's tenure, in just 26 days, they had 31 homicides. For the month, they had 39 homicides, almost 40 in 31 days, and they had 7 in the month of August for 2025. 7 homicides. The dog days of summer, when everybody's hot, when everybody's bothered, when everybody's shooting everyone in Baltimore. 7!
The voters will sit and see. They'll make the determination what philosophy they want to go with. I run again next year. If you like what I'm talking about, then I'll be there. If not, then I get it.
I think Ivan Bates has been the solution since day one. When he said, bring your toothbrush, the tone changed.
Political analyst John Dede argues Bates is the one driving change in Baltimore.
It's all about tone. And I think that by being very aggressive on prosecuting a lot of gun crimes, not slapping wrists on things.
And next year, voters will decide if they want 4 more years of Bates and his tougher on crime approach in the city.
Make no mistake about it, the Democratic Party is responsible for a lot of problems in this country, especially on the local level, especially in terms of issues like crime. And usually the D next to your name is a very bad indicator of things to come, especially if you're running for a law enforcement position. But with Ivan Bates, he totally disabuses me of that notion. First and foremost, they're never going to elect a Republican as state's attorney for Baltimore. It's never going to happen. But this man right here is better as a prosecutor than most Republicans across the nation, and I can't say anything but praise this man because he's essentially implemented the exact agenda that I've advocated for on this channel for years. So yeah, I don't give a damn about his party label. Ivan Bates is the most important prosecutor in the entire country because he went into one of the worst cities and the worst city over time in the entire nation and turned it around in a stunning, absolutely amazing way. And he did it by targeting repeat offenders, by amping up the data that they use in order to identify the people most likely to commit homicides and putting them in jail. He went with incapacitation instead of these diversion programs. And by the way, I'm not against diversion programs when you actually drive down crime. That's the time to experiment on whether or not you rehabilitate people, not when you're clearing like 0 homicides. And by the way, speaking of clearance rates, they were obviously comically bad under Marilyn Mosby. Again, all-time lows in clearance rates to start her tenure, well below the national average throughout her tenure, the overuse of special clearance in order to juice the stats. Well, guess what? Under prosecutor Ivan Bates, the savior of the city of Baltimore, clearance rates have risen to about 65%. I've never donated to a political campaign in my entire life. Well, actually, scratch that. One time I bought some shirts that I thought were cool from the Ron Paul political campaign. But other than that, I've never contributed money to a candidate. The first person on my list, if I sense he's even struggling a little bit in the Democratic primary, is Ivan Bates. It's this man right here. This is the most important prosecutor in the entire nation. He should be protected from all attacks because this man, Ivan Bates, went into the worst, most corrupt, most dangerous city, and in less than 3 years, he turned it into a relatively normal place to live. Again, still with higher crime than I would like to see, but compared to Baltimore, compared to what it has been, compared to what Marilyn Mosby had left him, where not only, again, did she just not prosecute people, but she actually removed experienced people who were capable of prosecuting for 8 years from the state's attorney's office. So Ivan Bates had to seek these people out, rehire them into the office, or hire new people that were actually interested in doing their damn job, and turn around the worst homicide rates in the entire country. He had to create this partnership with the federal government, with the state government, get creative, basically restore the data that was abandoned by Marilyn Mosby in order to focus on getting more violent thugs out of prison, in order to track down these criminals and start clearing the damn board. Again, the man has done so much for the city of Baltimore, and it's beautiful to see. And you know what? As effective as it is rhetorically to point out the disaster zones that many blue cities have become, the absolute chaos that is wrought when you implement progressive policies as a warning to make sure people never try that again anywhere else, the fact is the people of Baltimore are American citizens. These are people who are deserving of representatives that actually do their damn job. And guess what? When you do your job, when you have somebody who's committed to actually holding criminals accountable and redoubles that commitment repeatedly, not just rhetorically, but with his actions, you see positive results. You see Baltimore maybe, just maybe, on the cusp of being a place that's actually a nice place to live. And that on its own is worthy of praise. And you know what? For all the people in the left who said that the real issue of crime was poverty, we just needed to arrest poverty, or it was the pandemic effect, or any of those combinations of stupid ass explanations that don't fit the scenario, look at Baltimore. Again, their crime spike 2015 coincides with the Freddie Gray effect and the election of State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. And by the way, they absolutely had a crap mayor that was worse than Brandon Scott back then too, make no mistake about it. And that carried through, and by the way, didn't really change after the pandemic, after the George Floydification of the country, because they were already on that track since 2015. And it only broke when attitudes changed, when that woman got indicted because she just could not be unbelievably corrupt in other regards, and Ivan Bates came into office with a new philosophy. What we preach on this channel works. Incapacitation absolutely works. Locking up repeat offenders is the absolute proven best way in order to deal with criminality. And by the way, it probably is the only way to deal with criminality. And you take a terrible city in an absolutely awful situation that people thought there was no hope for. It was dying economically, dying in terms of population. You don't go out and try to arrest poverty, figure out what poverty's wearing. You arrest the criminals, the repeat gun offenders, those committing crimes time and time again, because obviously if you're robbing people with firearms repeatedly, it's only a matter of time before you pull the trigger and somebody dies as a result of that criminality. And look at where you're at. Homicides down 61%. 61%. Clearance up dramatically of homicides, to the point where maybe those people who are complaining about the fact that their loved ones' murders remained unsolved, you actually have the time and energy to devote to those cases, to figure out who did that, to lock those people up if you didn't already catch them in the sweeps that have been going on from Ivan Bates since then. So yeah, much love to Ivan Bates. Again, my favorite politician, the first person on my list. If I start donating to political campaigns, if you start finding my name first and last from New York City as a donor to somebody, it would be Ivan Bates, because he absolutely deserves it. And you'd be insane if you lived in Baltimore and you didn't vote to reelect him. This guy should get 100% of the vote. He should get a higher percentage of the vote than we see in Vladimir Putin's fake election or Kim Jong-un's equally fake election. I mean, what are we even talking about, guys? He is the person. This guy is the man, and he is promising to push forward with this philosophy. And honestly, anytime he wants to go for higher office, he wants to be the senator of Maryland, I'm on board with it. They're not going to elect a Republican anyway for some of these positions. Put this man in the governor's mansion instead of Governor Westmore, because he knows what is up. Now look, that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Ivan Bates being the savior of the city of Baltimore. Till next time.